Alright, salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. It is great to be back. I mean, for a lot of you, I've been here, but for me personally, this is the first time plopping down in front of the camera in about a couple of weeks now. I feel surprisingly well rested, very relaxed, and like I'm not feeling an immense amount of pressure. This is a great feeling. I'm gonna try to maintain this throughout 2021 because I forgot how this felt. I gotta be honest. Truth be told, while I was on my little staycation, I ended up getting COVID, so I was laid up for a while. So if I come back a little more flat and not as like poppy as I usually am, just know I'm still getting my energy back, but I do feel a lot better. And yeah, despite all of my attempts to be safe and I was incredibly paranoid, it still ended up getting me. But fortunately, I was one of the lucky people who didn't come out too damaged when it was all said and done. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna talk about Cyberpunk 2077. Big surprise there, but this was a conversation that started rolling around in the old brain, and as I was getting the cobwebs out, I was preparing myself to get back on camera. I was like, what do I want to talk about? And I saw that there was a big rumor for Cyberpunk 2077 that occurred between CD Projekt Red's last post, which was December 23rd. They've been quite silent, and now. And so what this was a big Reddit thread talking about things that pretty much people had wanted to hear, right? It had 6,000 plus upvotes mentioning the likes of a No Man's Sky type of bounce back, and that we were gonna see major people leaving the studio, and that morale was at an all-time low, and that they were changing the code. It was very much stuff that I think a lot of consumers wanted to hear about the game, and that was enough fuel for the fire, because then you saw a lot of YouTubers and websites grabbing this Reddit thread, which had really no source at all other than, bro, trust me. And so a lot of people ran with it. And what I wanted to talk about was not really, of course, the rumor itself, because it is false, but more so the conversation around Cyberpunk 2077. So when this Reddit thread started to spiral out of control, CD Projekt Red posted a tweet, like I said, after weeks of silence, because right now they're in that sort of mentality of let's put our heads down, let's get to work, and let's not cause more trouble for ourselves, because there was that period of time where the more they talked, the more issues cropped up. But anyway, the tweet reads saying, normally we don't comment on rumors, but this time we wanted to make an exception as this story is simply not true. Think it was smart to come out, go ahead, tell people this is very much not the case. That is what is happening within the studio itself. But the reason I wanted to focus on the conversation with CD Projekt Red is because as things quieted down, you'll notice that you'll see channels as well as websites searching for continuing the conversation when there is really no conversation to be had. To be quite truthful, I felt that time between when the news stopped around, I'd say, December 23rd and now was a time we could talk about the merits of the game. That's something that kind of got washed away with Cyberpunk 2077 because understandably so, there was save bugs, there were game crashes, there was major performance issues. Of course, the conversation, I feel, should have been on that and the constant breaking news that was occurring for CD Projekt Red. And as they continue to have investor calls and you'd see them talking to investors one way and consumers another, I really do understand why the conversation was centered on all of that. But there was a lull, and during that lull, I think it was a good time to talk about the story, the writing, the gameplay mechanics, features that could be added, you know, true feedback that can help aid this game, I think, in a lot of ways, because most of it has been pretty obvious on the technical front, but I feel like the time for the conversation to be had where we can talk about what is wrong and what is good about Cyberpunk 2077, like we had our window, but instead we saw websites and YouTubers essentially get bored and reach. And look, I'm not sitting here on my soapbox looking down at everyone going, how could you do that? I'm guilty of grabbing a Reddit thread or two and talking about them. I usually try to make sure there's something backing it up, whether it's a source or something plausible about it. I don't just like to grab a random Reddit thread and go, yeah, that one. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that. Okay, so I'm not gonna sit here and grandstand or anything like that. Don't get me wrong here, because I like a good rumor. I like to discuss. I like to speculate. You know, that's one of the cores of our channel here. But you always want to make sure that there's at least something there backing it. And I think what we saw was a lot of people get bored and try to generate the traffic themselves. Now, another example, a more understandable one, is GameSpot very recently. Let's take a look at an article they posted where the headline sells something to you completely different than what we're seeing in the actual product. So GameSpot posts a headline saying Cyberpunk 2077 has lost 79% of its player base on Steam since its launch. You read that and you go, whoa, It's a lot of players, right? That's 79%. That's a lot of people who have dropped off of this very big, highly anticipated game, right? It's a headline that cries for you to click on it. But when you look at the actual data, it's really not as worrisome. And in fact, for a single player game, the numbers that Cyberpunk is seeing even now is phenomenal. It's really good stuff. According to the article, they say better optimized on PC than on console, Cyberpunk has had a more positive reception on that platform, but has failed to maintain its player base since launch. Cyberpunk 2077 has lost 79% of its players since launch, according to data, with its current peak being over 200,000 players in comparison to its December peak of over 1 million players. By contrast, it took CD Projekt Red's previous game, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, 3 months to lose that percentage. However, The Witcher 3 started at a much lower peak of 92,000 at launch. Can I get a little bit of a reach here? Can I get a little bit of a reach here? We're like, I know, comparably speaking, we should talk about the merits of the games when it comes to Cyberpunk as well as The Witcher 3. I think those two should be compared and contrasted all day because, for example, with Fallout 4 and Bethesda, we were comparing and contrasting to Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, right? Like the comparing and contrasting as a game makes sense, but numbers-wise, these two really aren't comparable because the hype for Cyberpunk was something else. But to act like it is such a bad thing that Cyberpunk 2077 went from 1 million players, which is insane for a single-player game, to now they're down to 200,000, which is still insane, by the way. And the fact that despite all of the mess that has occurred for Cyberpunk 2077 that has maintained that player base, that is remarkable. And that is something that should rather be applauded than try to change it into a negative headline. But let's be honest, you can look at my channel for some anecdotal evidence. When the news was bad, clicks were up, views were up, interest was up. It wasn't just my channel, plenty of other YouTubers you can look at, plenty of other websites you can look at. And so really what this is turning into, this video, is the rambling of a man who just, I've been trying to talk about Cyberpunk and what kind of game it is for a while. And it's not an issue, by the way, that people are talking about bugs and stuff. Once again, I need to emphasize, it absolutely should have been a focal point. But what we're seeing between these 2 points here, this Reddit post and this headline from GameSpot, which got a lot of traffic on Twitter when it was posted because a lot of people were quoting it going like, come on, this really isn't a big thing at all. In fact, people have beat the game and moved on. That's pretty normal for a single player game. But more so what I'm trying to emphasize here is the conversation that could be had. I personally tried to shift to the actual game itself, even if it means I lose a lot of clicks. You know, I did 7 features I wanted to see added to the game, 7 things I wanted to see in the game improved that weren't technical, you know, things that I talked about the illusion of choice within the game and kind of how there is an issue with major selection of choice within the game and tried to explain why. I'm not saying I'm the pinnacle, you know, the spotlight creator here that everyone should be following, but I think for a lot of people I've been reading online as I've interacted every now and then during my staycation, a lot of people are like, I want to talk about the writing for the game. I think the writing sucks, or I think the characters are really good here, or I think this choice is great, but it's really hard to praise or dislike something without some type of kickback somewhere. And I think a lot of this can be attested to the void here where we had that moment where we could have had, say, that conversation about Cyberpunk, but we've seen it filled up with a fake rumor, which has now been completely wiped away, and a headline, which was a substantial reach on the player base, which is in fact booming. And I think it's only going to get bigger because we've talked about modding. CD Projekt Red has said they're looking into modding. We've seen mods come out that have adjusted certain things in Cyberpunk, not on an official capacity, you know, where it's more along the lines of like Nexus with Fallout New Vegas, but still, we're starting to see mods roll out. And I feel like if CD Projekt Red dials into that, you can have a situation like a Skyrim or a Fallout New Vegas where it'll just be a booming modding community, depending on how accessible mod usage is. But anyway, so hopefully this video doesn't come across too rambly to you. At the end of the day, I just feel like the conversation for Cyberpunk, due to CD Projekt Red's inaptitude, but also just the fact that when there was a window, we didn't really capture it, has sort of been muddied now. And that makes me worried for future content. That's kind of the crux of this whole video. I apologize, it took me a while to get to my real point of it all, but it worries me about future updates. It worries me about future expansions, not because I don't trust the talent at CD Projekt Red. I think despite the bugs and the issues I had with the game, you can clearly see that there was something really special about it, and I thought it was a really, really good time. But at the end of the day, you know, there is things in the game that I think people wanted to be better on a much broader scale. And so for that kind of feedback to not be able to get through, and for a lot of companies to sort of bring down the shutters and just go full focus mode and shut out the world, it prevents a lot of, I think, valuable feedback from getting in. And I think it's attested to stories like these where it's just another headache for the company, right? So anyway, it's just a video that I wanted to make for a while. I've been thinking about it for the last number of days, and I was like, I think this is a good one to come back to, right? To just sit down, talk about the state of Cyberpunk 2077, where it's at as a game, where it's at as a conversation, the merits of the game. So hopefully I've gotten my point across, and I want to emphasize just the third time here at the end of the video, it's no being disgruntled with the conversation on bugs, okay? As much as I like the game, it's one of those things where that conversation is 100% necessary. CD Projekt Red deserve to have their feet put to the flames for lacking in transparency and all that stuff. So don't get me wrong, it's not an issue with that. It's more so that we had a window for a conversation to be had, and I feel like a lot of creators and a lot of websites got bored and they took the low-hanging fruit. And so that's where it stands for me. Hopefully soon we'll learn about the major patch in January coming to Cyberpunk 2077. Seems like it'll only be a matter of time as we progress into the month now and we get to the later sections of it. But the good news is they're taking their time on it, right? There's no need to rush this patch at this point. Game already has enough problems. So hopefully we'll talk about that soon. But for now, I just wanted to put this conversation out there and get that started. See what you all think. Are you against this idea? Do you think that I am completely wrong? Let me know in the comments down below. Or do you agree? Fire away. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts. It's good to be back. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who really signed up. I mean, seriously, when we had left off at the end of 2020, we were at a high level of patrons that I've never seen before, and we've maintained that. So thank you so much for believing in me, in my content, who I am, and just once again, thank you so much. And with that, I'll talk to all of you soon. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.